Well, today is November 19th, 1988, and why don't we begin by you saying your full name?
My full name is Perla Soto Gomez.
Now, have you heard any stories from your parents about how they gave you that name?
Well, Soto Morrejon is my real name before I was married. Gomez came in with marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And how I got that name? Yes, I know quite well how I got that name.
What's the story there?
Well, my father is the son of Dominga Calderón de la Barca and Pedro Soto. Dominga Calderón de la Barca was direct descendant of Tomás Calderón de la Barca, brother of the great Spanish bard Calderón de la Barca, Don Pedro Calderón de la Barca, and came to Cuba. Her family came to Cuba in the early 1800s.
Uh-huh.
Now, that's on my father's side. On my mother's side, my grandfather was Ramón Morrejon Capote. He was the son of Margarita Capote. That was the Marquis of Villavicencia in Spain, and Casa Caracena. And he came to Cuba, landed by the King of Spain. You know, they used to give them land in the early 1800s. So she came with her two sons. She had lost her husband. And she came with her two sons to settle in Cuba.
Do you know when that was? Have you heard?
In the year of 1811 or 1812.
Oh, you know pretty exactly. Yeah.
Oh, yes. And my grandfather was born in 1852.
And what was his name?
It's Ramón Morrejon Capote. That Margarita was his mother. Okay. And she had inherited the title from her father, which she had to renounce to it when she came to Cuba. That title has been sold many times. The last man to buy it was, I guess you have heard of Franco.
Yes.
Retired Spain. Well, his #1 man was the Marqués of Villavicencio. He was the last to buy that title in Spain, because after this 1850s, all those titles started to be sold, you know, to the one who offered more money. So all those titles were sold in Spain, and their title was sold to, or the family sold it to this fellow that was Franco, #1 man. And as far as I know, he still has the title today, although they don't mean a thing in Spain anymore. But I think he does carry the title to this day. Well, then another nice, very interesting thing about the Capotes, that Truman Capote, one of the greatest American writers, is the adopted son of Juan Capote. And Juan Capote was a cousin of my grandfather. So from the Capote side, it's a very interesting side. From Soto, my grandfather came from, I suppose, a family from Galicia, because they were Gallegos, Spain. But he was born in Dominica, north of Venezuela, Colombia, you know, those islands?
Yeah.
He was born there, and he was raised there, in sugar plantation in Dominica. And I never knew his father and mother.
Now who is this?
My grandfather on my father's side, Soto.
And you never knew them?
I never knew them because they never came to Cuba. His parents, he came to Cuba. Now, his wife was Dominga Calderón de la Barca, which I have told before. He was a direct descendant from Tomás Calderón de la Barca, brother of Don Pedro Calderón de la Barca. Those are great. It's a Shakespeare of Spain. So that's on that side. Then in the modern days comes my father.
Have you heard any more stories about him? About this figure, this literary...
Oh, Calderón, oh yes, I know. But they were a very quiet, you know, introverted family. And you hardly know anything about Calderón de la Barca.
Oh.
I know that one of his family was Viceroy of Mexico in Mexico. that his wife became Marquise Calderón de la Barca, but given by Alfonso XII. She was the first woman that taught the royal family in Spain, the children, the first woman. She was not Spanish, she was from Holland, but she had married Calderón de la Barca. So Alfonso XII made her a Marquise Calderón de la Barca. Okay. Well, that title has gone to one of her nieces from Holland that left the family, went back to Holland, you know, the family. That's what I know about Calderón de la Barca. Then about Capote, all I know is my grandmother. She came to Cuba. My great aunts were beautiful, two beautiful women. My great aunts, that's my grandfather's sisters. And my grandfather, just the three of them. And of course, their families. My grandfather's family and the other two that I don't know much about them.
Did you know much about your grandparents?
Oh yes, my grandparents, yes.
Yeah, so
very much so.
And you knew them when you were growing up?
Oh yes, until I came to the United States. Very close to my grandparents.
Tell me about your grandmother. Can you tell a story that would sort of convey a sense of who she was? And
well, my grandmother was a very spoiled woman.
Was she?
She was the mistress and the queen of the house.
Oh.
To the date she died at 96. When she called, everybody went. Spoiled.
She got her way.
Her way, all her life. And that's the most I can say of her, because but she has very wonderful children, very wonderful children. In fact, and very long lived. I have an aunt in Cuba that was 100 years old in February, and another one that's 94. Those are my father's sisters. Oh. So, but I haven't seen them since the Castro regime. I haven't seen them.
Yes.
And that's
you hear from them by mail?
I have talked to them on the phone and by mail, yes. But nothing important, nothing interesting. Their children have grown very well, and they're very nice people in Cuba, you know. But they just all got what they wanted. My generation, no, the generation after mine. They are all very intelligent, cultured children, but I don't know anything about them because I have been to Cuba since 1948 and my father died. Now talking about my father, I will never stop because he was my idol.
Well, tell me about him then.
I think he was
begin with your earliest memory? Do you have your earliest memory of your father?
Since I was born, I think. I think he was the greatest person that ever existed. He was considered one of the giant children of Cuba. Yeah. At 17, he was a captain in the Spanish-American War, 1898. And he became one of the greatest Cuban politicians. In fact, the day he died, I declared that he had died the only man that knew political law in Cuba. And everybody loved him. He did a lot for Cuba. In fact, he did for Cuba what Castro has done by force in the Senate and in Congress.
So he did it through the system, the legal system.
Through the legal system. And of course, he died in 48. He never knew Castro or anything of what happened to Cuba after. And he always got his way. The president of Congress was Lanuza. At the time he was elected to Congress, he was just a child practically. In 1911, he was elected to Congress, and he was the youngest man ever elected to Congress in Cuba. But I think any place in the world, I haven't seen any congressman at 29 and 30. And he kept going there. He was the advisor to the Cuban presidents twice, to Menocal and to Machado, that where Machado was part of our family. But in their first two terms, first term, because you know they had two terms, Machado and Menocal had two terms. Well, he was their advisor in their first term, and it's when they did the greatest things that Cuba has ever been done. When he left them for the things that start happening, you know, bribing and this and that and the other, he wouldn't take anything ever like that. So in the second term of those two presidents, they just failed. So that is to his credit. And he created in Cuba things that nobody else has. He gave pensions to the widows and children of the people from the 1898 revolution with back pay that nobody has ever bothered. He was the one who installed the care for the people in the telegraphs and post office, created laws so they would be protected, they would be given retirements. And to the point that the day he died, all those people, it was a national holiday in Cuba, of course, and all those people were lining the cemetery of Colon on both sides until he was buried. So he did for Cuba what many, probably not many in Cuba has done, but he died too young. So.
What was your father's full name?
Oscar Soto Calderón de la Barca. He was a Calderón de la Barca for his mother and Soto by his father. There's not much important, interesting about Soto. He just came to Cuba, married my grandmother, but he was a very quiet man. There was nothing important to say about his father. But he became just the most respected man that I ever known in Cuba while he lived. Of course, now he's forgotten, you know. People are forgotten as soon as they die very quickly. But he was a very, very much admired man in Cuba. The day he died was really a day of grief and a day of sorrow in all Havana. In all Cuba, they had to wait for people to come from all the provinces before they could bury him. He was in state for 6 days until everybody came from all the provinces to pay their respects. And so they say that the temperature, that's what they call it, I guess, in the Veterans Hall is the highest it's ever been in Cuba from the people, from so many people in there, you know, they just couldn't hold one more person. When I see Kennedy's funeral, for some reason, always reminds me of my father. There was a lot of my father in Kennedy. There was the same type of man, very intelligent, very cultured, and really wanting the good of the people. So there's always been for me a parallel there between Kennedy and my father. And he'll do anything for anybody. He's the only man in Cuba that handled, you would say, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and actually died poor because he gave everything away. So if I start talking about him, I never finish. We're never ending.
Have you heard how he met your mother?
Yes, he met my mother in Cienfuegos. Yes. By the way, Cienfuegos was where I was born.
Oh, okay.
Was created by one of my great uncles, Calderón de la Barca. He's the one who created Cienfuegos to other Cubans. And they call it Cienfuegos because then they had a general Cienfuegos in Cuba from Spain. That was a very wonderful man, and they call it Cienfuegos for that reason. And 3 men bought just land, and it's the Cienfuegos of today that is second city in Cuba. So it's really how the Calderón de la Barcas has a lot of name in Cuba, you know. But of course, after they're dead, that's it.
And that's where your parents met in that?
In Cienfuegos, yes.
And how did they meet? Did you hear? Have you heard any?
Well, I wouldn't know. I never heard how they met, but I suppose the average way, man meets woman,
Do you know how
and it happens.
Do you know about their courtship? Did your mother ever tell you?
No, never. Well, I was too small when she died, see?
Oh, yes.
She died, I was just going on 6 years of age.
Oh, yes. Now tell me your mother's name.
Rafaela Morejón y Reyes.
Now, how much do you remember of her?
Completely, I remember her. Like if I am looking at her today.
Really?
Yes. Well, I was quite a precocious child, you know. I was well advanced for my years always. And they
encouraged you to be to learn.
Oh yes, always. I was always very curious and very advanced in school. And I graduated when I was in high school when I was 15 years old, and I graduated from School of Pharmacy of Havana, Cuba, University, when I was only 21. And then came to Philadelphia and graduated in Philadelphia College of Pharmacy in Philadelphia. So you see, I was always ahead of my time.
When did you go to Philadelphia?
In 1923, for the postgraduate.
And what was it like arriving in Philadelphia? That must have been a very new...
Very new and very cold. But the coldest place I've ever been in my life, and the hottest in summer too.
You must have had no preparation for those cold winters.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I would refuse to wear a coat. So I would go out with freeze to death. I had never worn a coat in my life. In Cuba we don't wear coats. We buy them and we carry them just for fashion, but we never wear them. It's a 70, 72 temperature practically the whole year around. So it was quite an experience. And then I married in Philadelphia. I married in Philadelphia and then came to California in 1926.
Now, how did you meet your husband?
I met my husband by chance.
Oh.
Yes, I used to I went to Philadelphia. I used to take a postgraduate at the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy, and I would wait for the streetcar because it was in those days cars were not running like they do today. So they would see me in the corner waiting for and one day the father took them all to work, the Spanish style, where son goes, Papa goes, and Papa is the head of the business. And so the Papa went with them every morning to take them to work. Grown men in their 20s, 20s. And one day he asked his son to stop the car because he saw that girl all the time there waiting. Maybe she could give me a ride. And that's how I met him. So they would take me to school in the morning, to the university in Philadelphia, and then from there they invited me to some big affair at the Pan American Club, and that's how it got there. They were supposed to go back to Cuba, and I didn't want to, because I didn't want to go with my stepmother, so I got married. So it wasn't a love affair, it was just I didn't want to go back to Cuba, and of course my father wouldn't leave me in Philadelphia alone.
Yes.
And from there, I've been American.
What was your husband's name?
Jose Gomez. Jose Gomez Diaz. A very wonderful person, but very nice, but he died young. He died in his, I don't think he was 60 years old when he died.
Had he been ill?
No, never. Never ill. Had some intestinal trouble or something, but he was a very nice person. But when I think back, I wish I had gone back to Cuba.
You wish you had gone back?
Oh, yes. Because I heard my father, and that was my life anyway.
Did you and your husband think of going back, or he wanted to stay?
No. He was a Spaniard. He came from Spain, and they settled in Philadelphia. No, I was a Cuban at heart and a Cuban today, still.
But you didn't want to go back to Cuba before you met him?
No, on account of my stepmother. He married a very young girl.
And you didn't get along?
Yes, we got along, but I didn't want to go back with her. I was very high-strung, and I wouldn't, and she would rule us, you know how it is in Latin countries. Until you get married, you are just a child behind bars. So.
I'm glad you didn't go back.
You're glad? I'm glad too, especially for having you. Yeah, but I had a wonderful life, really. When married, had 5 children. I have right now 26, I have to see, 6 children with Phil, 25 grandchildren, 30 great-grandchildren, 30 great-grand, and 6 that have come in by marriage, so I have 36 great-grandchildren, and 1 that is in the oven.
1 in the oven. Simmering.
Yeah.
Simmering in the
Simmering in the oven. So imagine I have 70, I'm responsible for about 72 people.
Oh,
so,
boy.
Good or bad, they'll never forget me.
That's almost a small nation.
I could do like my great Calderón de la Barca. I could buy a town.
Yes.
And take them all with me. Yeah.
How did you decide to study pharmacy?
I didn't want to. I wanted to study medicine. My father said pharmacy, and pharmacy had to be.
What was his reasoning, do you think? Women didn't study medicine in those days?
Well, it was very difficult. The School of Pharmacy, medicine in Cuba only had 2 women. And they suffer so, you know, the boys. They didn't want them there. And they do such dirty tricks. And my father was a Puritan. He would tremble at the idea that I can take an organ and put it in my purse. That's what the boys used to do. Yes, that's what they used to do. And he forbade me completely to any other school of medicine. So he said pharmacy, and being that I did everything he said, pharmacy it was. But I really, all my life, and I've been inclined to medicine all my life, just I have more interest in medicine than of course I work in pharmacy about, let's see, since 1941. See, I first had my children.
Yes.
And then I took the board of pharmacy after I had been a pharmacist for, I don't know, since from 1921 to 1933 that I took the board, 35, about 13 years. So I took the board of pharmacy in San Francisco, and then went to work.
Where did you work?
At the Aldrich Company for years.
Where was that?
In Post and Grant in San Francisco.
In a little drugstore?
Drugstore, yeah. Oh, they had a beautiful drugstore.
So people would come in and give you a prescription.
Yeah, right.
And you'd grind it up? Or you'd
right, still, you're right. We still have to make the pills by hand.
Yeah.
In 1941. And I remember the first pills that I ever made were arsenic. And I've never been so frightened in my life. I didn't sleep that night thinking that maybe the man had died. Or it's really a terrible experience. You know, the small amount of arsenic that you have to use to make 20, 25 pills. And I was, did I weigh it right? Did I weigh it right? Oh, it was a terrible experience. I dreamed of it for almost a week.
What does arsenic do in medicine? What is it?
Well, it stimulates the body. They used to use it for syphilis too.
So you just need a little bit to stimulate it. Too much, you overstimulate.
So a little that you can kill a person with one pill. And that's the hardest experience I had in my life, that first night after making by hand arsenic pills. But then you get so that you get right into it, you know. What
were the most common prescriptions you filled? Were there certain things that people had, certain conditions that were common?
You wouldn't believe it. Epsom salts for heart attacks.
Really?
Today, all the pills they have and all the factories and all the different things they have invented for the heart, Epsom salts solution, 1 tablespoon after meals or something like that. That is a laxative, more or less. That was the first thing that astonished me, and arsenic. Arsenic, that's the first 2 prescriptions. Of course, now everything is commercialized, everything comes in pills. People, there's no danger in any drug because they 1 tablet 3 times a day, or 1 teaspoonful 3 times a day, and already the manufacturers have taken the responsibility of it. But then we had to do everything just from scratch, suppositories, everything from scratch completely. So it was quite an experience. But then after 8 or 10 years, everything started being commercial, you know. So, but I had a good life. I had a very good life.
Did people have prescriptions for tranquilizers as much in those days as they do?
No. Then they used to give a little bit of phenobarbital, but no tranquilizers. They didn't exist. In 1940, tranquilizers didn't exist. They used to use old-fashioned things like. Let's see, I've forgotten what they use. Simple things, completely simple things for nervous people. For instance, they would give them, I don't know, I can't even remember what they even gave them. Things that today they wouldn't think even of manufacturing.
We hear a lot today about being addicted to drugs. Now, in those
days, such a thing.
In those days,
they didn't exist.
No, people brought in a prescription and you never thought, oh, this person has had this filled so many times, they're probably addicted to this.
Didn't exist. Everything was so plain.
Didn't occur to you then? It didn't exist. Didn't exist. For nerves, there were bromides, and they could drink bottles of it if they wanted to. Oh.
Tasted awful, and bromides, that's all. Or maybe teas made at home from some herb or something like that. But
Coca-Cola.
That was used, the Coca-Cola, for children, for babies, for intestinal troubles. Just Coke. Syrup Coke, you know. That's about the only one that could have had a little bit of you know, habit forming, but no, but for infants, But you never heard of. Now you heard of morphine addiction, yes.
Oh yes.
But mostly among the doctors. Yes, they were the addicted ones.
Injected?
Themselves.
Yeah.
Some of them couldn't perform without cocaine. I mean, without morphine. And that was just general, you know, that the most addicted people in my time were the doctors. Today they don't have, they're treated like everybody else. They cannot even touch it. Everything has to be on triplicates to buy drugs. But actually, were the doctors, the people that were most addicted in my time. And they have an access to it, you know, they could get it. But people wouldn't even think of that. What didn't exist? The addiction didn't exist. The addiction was to coffee, to black coffee, or tea. But I never heard of a woman addicted in my life where I grew up, or if they were very, very ill, probably they gave them morphine. But that was in the hospital. I was never at home or anything like that. I never knew anyone that had an addiction to any drug until I was in my 50s. Never. Oh, and now you know how it is now. Well, the public was not either so well informed and informed of everything that they are now. Now even a child, 10 years old, knows what coke is and what morphine is and cocaine and all that. Those things were prohibited subjects. Nobody ever talked about it.
Is that the same with alcoholism at the time?
That didn't exist.
It wasn't discussed.
That didn't exist. In my country, it didn't exist. I never saw a woman with a drink in her hand until I was 40 years old. And the men the same. In Cuba, the people didn't drink. They drank, the people, the truck drivers and things like that in the morning. But in my home, there was everything in a cabinet, and it was never touched. My father's family, they really were teetotalers. They wouldn't even touch beer, you know. But I think it might have something to do with the great-grandfather, my grandmother's father, that died from coming out of some friends played a joke on him and poured alcohol in his, you know, made him drink, which he didn't. And when he tried to get on her horse, he fell down and he was killed by the horse, by his own horse. And I think that has something to do with my father's family not drinking at all. I guess it went from, you know, from generation to generation. No one ever touched liquor. Nobody. One of my uncles, I think, Torres, by the time he was 40, 50, I think might have taken to drink, but never. None of them. My father never touched even wine, not even sweet wine, nothing. And no one in his family, not my grandfather, my grandmother, none of the family. Maybe that's why they live so long. They're 194 and they're still alive.
Now, how old are you today? Do you want to say?
Oh yes, 85 years old.
85.
Oh yes.
When was your birthday?
Last July, July 6th. Yes. But I don't think of age. I never have thought of age. I can do anything anybody can do, to a certain extent, of course. I do.
And you do everything you want to do.
Right. Well, I can jump in a pool still and swim back and forth. I jumped in the pool with my great-grandchildren just about 4 weeks ago. And they were just astounded because I could swim underwater. It was the cutest thing you ever want to see. Great-grandma, great-grandma, great-grandma. It was really funny. But my mind is very active. I don't think I have lost much of my mind, and I think it'll last yet for another 5, 6 years. I think so, because I'm very interested in everything, you know, and I think that's the secret of it. And I think I love everybody and everything, and that's the secret of long life, I think. Because I think that when you hate and anger, your heart just beats too fast. Yeah, I think so. I think it's my temperament has a lot to do with it.
How does someone learn to forgive? If someone has a hard time forgiving, what can you teach them? What can you say to them about how to let go and forgive?
Remember that it's more important to love than be loved. It's not important to be loved. That's not what keeps you alive. What keeps you alive is when you love. And when you love, you forgive. You cannot hold a grudge against no one that you love. I find it very easily to forgive. Yeah. Well, in the first place, I never hold a bad thought too long. I can get mad for a moment, but that's it, yes. Very easy that way. And of course, I think too, very important that I love children very, very much. I just go, like they say, gaga for a little baby. And I don't care if I have to take care of them 24 hours. So I think that's a lot to do. If you love children, it's very important for an older person. Because I think that older person is unhappy because they love themselves too much. They don't think of themselves and what people do to them, and that people, they don't love them. No, that's not the important thing. The important thing is to love. To love even an ant going to his burrow on the floor. Yes, it's important. Because what's the use of keeping a grudge anyway? You're not hurting anybody but yourself. That's how I felt always, So I'm a happy-go-lucky. When they say happy-go-lucky, and I have a lot of them to keep me alive. See, yeah, a lot of them to keep me alive. And one is nice, and the other one is nicer and nicer and nicer. I have a lot of nice children around me.
Yeah.
And of course, you're just remembering how they grew up and the things that have happened and all that. That's just a consolation.
You've seen so many be born, haven't you?
My God.
Children, grandchildren, great.
25 grandchildren, 30 great-grandchildren, and 6 that are not mine, that have come by marriage. But they're just mine. I just consider them mine too. So.
Now, what time of year do you see most of them? Is it very often you have a reunion with as many of them as possible?
Yes, I see them most of the time at Christmas, at Easter.
You must be busy at Christmas and Easter.
Yes, but not too much though. I'm sort of, old people are very nice once in a while, but kids and young people growing up, they are not comfortable with old people around. I am very lucky. They are with me, but I mean, there's no place for a person 85 years old among youngsters growing up that want to do certain things that they would be embarrassed or something, right? I think so. I love them, but I think that children and love young people, and as they grow older, they love themselves and they want their own way of life, and an old person have no place in their lives. That's how I feel, and I think they love me more for that. I don't think I ever had it, did I? An argument with any of my grandchildren or my children, with anybody, because I'm never on their way. Never on their way. And if people learn to understand that, this world would be happier. It's just these older people that want to be 40 years old, and the 40s that want to be 20, and that's what causes the trouble in life, because everybody should keep their own state in life, And that doesn't exist. You see old ladies around with their hair dyed and going out with boys practically 25, 30 years old, and ridiculous, And that's what makes for unhappiness, because when they are thrown aside, they can't take it.
I saw George Burns on television the other day. He's 90-something.
Isn't he something? Well, that's.
And they said, "What's the secret to your success?" He said, "I never tell a joke that isn't right for my age." He said,
Right.
"I always act my own age."
Right, exactly. That's what he
everyone
said.
expects me because they know that I'm in my 90s and I act like I'm supposed to.
Exactly. That's a wise man. Oh, he is he's one of the great people I think that I have seen. He acts his own age, and he'll live another 10 years. And he's been a very loving man. He's done a lot for people, and as you say, he has acted his own age always, and that helps a lot. I think I have to. I think I have to, and I have a lot of fun.
Tell me about now. Let's go back about brothers and sisters. Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I had. We were 7.
7 of you in all.
7.
Now, which number were you?
3.
You were number 3.
Number 3. So I was never spoiled.
Why were you spoiled as number 3?
I was never spoiled.
Oh, you never were spoiled. I see.
Never.
Yes.
My 2 elder sisters were fighting always for my father and mother. See? And the 2 youngest ones were doing the same thing.
So you got right in the middle.
Right in the middle, see? So I wasn't exactly been taken care minute by minute and day by day, because I was there too quickly for the one before me, and the one next to me only 13 months away from me. So I grew up like what they say, like the little kid in the, like Topsy, what they call her, Topsy. I grew like Topsy all by myself, and I adore my mother, I adore my father. So the few years I had them, I just remember them just like the greatest thing in my life.
Was your mother ill a long time? Or
no, she died after my youngest brother was born. Suddenly, she was fine. She got up. I think they kept him in bed too long those days.
After he was born?
After he was born, 21 days after he was born. And it was a blood clot in her brain. I think they kept them in bed. They used to keep them in bed too long, you know, and maybe her circulation was not right. She was only 29 years old, and 7 children. And of course, we were sent to the convent. So my life really, from the 6 years of age until 14, was just with the nuns in a convent, Sacred Heart.
You went to live there full time?
Oh yes. My father was a politician, and he was an attorney, so he had no time for us. After my mother died, the first weeks, yes, he went to see us, but after 2-3 months, you know, men, no matter how wonderful they are, they have their own lives to live, and he was a very busy man. So the nuns actually were our mother and father, the madams of the Sacred Heart. And we stayed there until it was time for high school, because they didn't have high school then in those days. Nowhere, none of the private schools. They didn't exist. I was in the University of Havana with 14 other girls, that's all. There were hundreds and hundreds of boys, and we were 15 girls, and most of them we were in pharmacy. 2 or 3 in law, 1 in engineering, and pharmacy. And we were 15 in that big University of Havana. So you see, it's just how the times were. Just,
So it was all girls in the convent?
Oh yes.
So you grew up all among girls?
Among girls until I went to high school, 13 years old.
And it's always been easy for you to have girl friends then? Women, are you close to friends?
Well,
women friends?
no, but I had more. My father then wouldn't let us go out with boys or anything until we were 18, and he wouldn't even let us go out with a boy or anything. If they visited, it had to be right in the house, with the boy sitting there, you sitting here, and my stepmother sitting over there. So it was. Well, that was Victorian epoch, you know. It wasn't ourselves, it was everybody, you know. So it's a different life. It's incredible. The children of today wouldn't believe it, that at 18 you have to sit with the boy across you and the mother or the grandmother sitting over there until he went home, you know. Oh, I was 18 years old, and I never in my life had a boy even put a hand on me or try to kiss me or anything. They wouldn't have dared. My father would have killed him. That's the Victorian era.
Well, what did you date anyone? Oh, who was your first date?
My first date was a boy in the University of Havana, but no date, just in the university. We talk on that, and then on the weekends he could come and visit for 30-40 minutes in the house. His name was Julito Arguelles. But then I went. My father sent us to Philadelphia because he couldn't handle my stepmother and us too. It was too much. She really created a havoc in the house. She was a good woman, you know, but she was younger than my oldest sister, and it created so he sent us to Philadelphia, and that's where my American life started.
Now, how did they choose the school? How did he choose the Philadelphia school? Was that the best one?
Yeah, the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy and Science, yes. First we went to New Orleans. In 1960, he sent us to New Orleans. My uncle was a general consul in New Orleans. So he sent us to New Orleans, to the same convent. He just transferred us from the convent in Havana to New Orleans. So we stayed there 2 years. That's why I learned my first English in New Orleans. That's why I have the accent I have. I learned English among French people, see.
Did you learn French too?
The French accent, huh?
Did you learn any French too?
Oh yes, with French, English and Spanish. That from the 6th grade on, always over there. Cuba, the system of education is very, very advanced, very advanced. Was probably it is now too.
What's the life like, and how long were you in New Orleans?
2 years.
Is it true what they say about the voodoo? Is there, you know,
no, I never saw anything like that.
You never heard any of that?
Nothing, no. I was 11 and left New Orleans when I was 13. Then I went to the regular a private school that was for high schools. That's the first time that they opened a school in Cuba that you could learn high school and graduate from high school. That didn't exist. They train in the convent. They train you for being a lady, making beautiful desserts and things like that, you know, learning how to meet people, how to salute, you know. But after that, they wouldn't teach you anything. That wasn't, and they were the most advanced nuns that exist.
And nothing in the way of real ideas.
No.
You weren't taught ideas,
no,
philosophy, and history.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. They had come from France. You know, they had expelled them from France, the Mothers of the Sacred Heart. And they came to New York, and then of course they went all over the world. It's the greatest boarding school for youngsters. They have a beautiful one here in Menlo Park, and wonderful, the Sacred Heart nuns. But just to learn to be a lady, that's all.
And were the nuns strict?
Very strict, very strict. And and everything was by the clock. You know, like in the army, everything by the clock. Yeah.
And if you didn't do it right, you'd get
you get punished.
What kind of punishment would it be?
Well, I wouldn't know. I was an angel.
Oh, so I'm sure you heard about the others being punished.
No, nothing much. Nothing much.
Like being grounded for a few days or have to do extra work?
No, they would. For instance, they would. We had study rooms for. We have about 6, 10 pianos for the practicing, and they would lock them for a week with their books in a piano room, and they had to do their studying and all by themselves. And for a whole week or for 10 days, that was the most they would punish. My sister was always punished. She was the devil, the eldest one. And she was always, and then they forced them to practice the piano or sitting in there. Instead of going to class, I forbade them going to class, which was a punishment in itself. No recreation, no dining room table, nothing. And they lived like prisoners in the practice rooms for 3 days or 4 or a week. But I was pretty good. I was a pink ribbon baby, and then, see, because I get ribbons. If you are good, they give you a ribbon, blue ribbon, a pink ribbon for the young children, green for the middle-aged girls, and blue for the older girls. And I never lost my pink ribbon. You know, I was just I was an angel. I love that pink ribbon more than I love the nuns or anybody. And so it helped a lot. But you'd be surprised. Well, the same as in the army. Why the soldiers are so good, and lieutenants and this and that for the decorations.
Yes.
Well, we felt decorated with a pink ribbon and a nice pin here, and you do anything for it.
Now, did you have brothers?
Yes, 3 brothers and 3 sisters.
And they went to the boys' equivalent. They went to the boys'
They went to
Catholic.
Belém, yeah, to the Jesuits.
And did you see them very often?
No, just about every 3-4 months.
Yes. Now, are any brothers or sisters?
No, the 2 of them are dead. One is alive. Only 1 sister is alive and 1 brother.
And where are they?
In Cuba.
Oh, in Cuba.
Oh yeah, my sister was a professor in. She's 87, I think, and they just they retired her 3 years ago from the University of Havana. She was teaching the graduates of philosophy and literature. Oh, she's a brain. She's like my father. Yes, brilliant woman, and well past 70, almost 80. They retired her now, and they have never bothered her. She's an attorney too. She became an attorney in her young days. And of course, she's retired. But Castro has never bothered her. She has her home. She writes me that she gets so bored with TV and with this and that. She has everything she had 20, 30 years ago. So he hasn't bothered people that are in the, for instance, the professionals. None of the professionals. They keep on with their work, doing what they have to do. They have never been bothered in Cuba, never. And of course, she couldn't live any better here. And of course, she's not a communist, she's not a politician, but she thinks Castro is the greatest thing that God ever created. Oh, she went very angry with me because I made a remark in a letter about Castro. He says, if feeding the poor and teaching the ignorant is communism, then we are communists. So she gave it to me. So I never mentioned it to her again. Very, very set on. She's a writer. She's very, very intelligent woman.
And your brother?
No, my brothers are dead.
Oh, and you don't have a brother there now anymore?
No more now.
Oh, I see.
I have one in New York.
Oh, one in New York.
Yes, he's about 6, 7 years younger than I am, but he hasn't amounted to much. He just, you know, he has about 11 kids, and he goes from one kid to the other and visiting and that, so he has done nothing with his life. But he was very, very intelligent boy. But
what do you think happened?
I don't know. He gave up.
Oh, he gave up.
He gave up.
So it's important not to give up, isn't it? I mean,
Right.
if you give up, everything is down.
When you give up, you might as well go and dig your grave, because you can't give up in this world, you know. You have to keep on going.
Why do you think some people, when they, you know, one person, two people both have a hard time. One gives up and one gets stronger. Why do you think that is?
I think it's lack of intelligence, lack of thinking. Because if you really think, who cares what? As long as you can get your way, open your way in life, what do you care whether many people die and get sick because somebody doesn't like them or this and that? Who cares? You have to worry who you care for. And you are outlooking life, not other people. Because believe me, if somebody gets in your way that is not the one that should be, and you don't pay any attention, somebody else will come by. There are many billions of people in this world to be bothered for one particular person. It's just, and that's why people go gaga, como they say here, because they love themselves too much. They love themselves too much, because if you think of other people, you don't have time to be feeling sorry for yourself. There's too much to do.
So if you love yourself too much, you're always looking for everyone to love you as much as you love yourself.
And to sacrifice for you.
Oh.
And you're never going to get that. Because once you get too spoiled and things like that, then you want more.
It's greed, isn't it?
Greed. That's greed, just like with money.
Yeah, just like with money. Yeah.
Just like with money. And you just, it's not right. It's not right. I think that the thing in life is just to love, not to be loved. That's how I always felt of my life anyway. Because once you start thinking who loves you and who doesn't, what they do to you, what they don't do to you, who cares? You have to care what you do and how you're going to open your way in this life, because nobody cares really in that way. You know, if they get too much money, they're not going to divide it with you. Very few are going to say, here, because I have too much. Nobody, right.
It doesn't happen that way too much, does it?
Very few times. And the more they get, the more they want.
Yeah.
And they'll sell their own parents for money sometimes. So the thing is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you marry your husband in Pennsylvania?
In Philadelphia, yeah.
Now, what kind of wedding was it?
No wedding. I didn't want any wedding. I just went.
Justice of the peace.
I just went to the priest.
A priest.
And with my sister, and was married, and that was it.
Very quiet and small.
Very quiet, yeah. Not even small. Nobody. Just my sister.
Oh.
Just my sister.
And was any of his family there?
No, because I had nobody in Philadelphia.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
Were students there. And to invite a lot of people that I just knew, acquaintance, it was ridiculous. They had no interest in me, I didn't have any interest in them either. So, and I've always been sort of a loner most of my life. Apart from now kids, yes, I can have thousands of them around. But grown-ups never have craved much for the interchange of with women and parties and like that. No. I was practiced slave in my house for years, 5 kids. I never left them with anybody. But it's my personality you have to be born that way. And I didn't miss anything. I spent my life with music and with, I don't know, painting and doing this, doing that. Never miss it, never miss company of people. Because that's when people suffer so much, you know, when they want to keep up with this one and the other one. It's hard. I had a beautiful home in Ross, and they used to come every Saturday. Sometimes there were 50 there, and I stayed in my room until 3:30 in the afternoon. They come and they set the table for games, for this and that. Everybody did whatever they wanted to do. Some went swimming, and I'd be in my room.
Where was this house?
In Ross.
In Ross?
Yeah.
In Marin County?
Marin County.
Oh,
And sometimes there were 60 people there on a Saturday. I didn't care. They took care of themselves.
Yes, yes.
Your mother must remember very well. She was growing up. They come, they had bridge tables, they had poker tables, they had canasta. Others swam, others played the piano in the living room. I didn't care. Just until 3 o'clock, nobody saw my face because I couldn't take care of them all at the same time. They took care of themselves. So I've been always a very independent person.
What year were you married?
In 1924.
So that was still before the Depression.
Oh, yes.
What were your first married years like, you and your husband, financially and socially?
Oh, very, very good. See, he was in the jewelry business. He always had lots
Which business?
Jewelry business.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Always. See, during the Depression, when people were dying of hunger, they were making money. Because everybody invested their money in diamonds. All the rich people invested in diamonds. So I don't know what a depression was or anything like that.
So it never touched you?
Never.
But you saw it, but you just didn't?
Not much either, because I had small children. I never left the house, so I didn't have much to do with the depression. I knew that they had bread lines and all that, but I never saw them.
What did you think of Franklin Roosevelt? Was he a hero to you?
I loved him. He's the president. He and Kennedy, to me, are the only two presidents that have done anything for this country. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, with all the, he's the one who created Social Security. He created all the. You remember when during the war he created all these different ABC or BBC or whatever the letters were, for the children, for the older people, for the younger one. He kept the whole United States going. I think he's one of the greatest presidents.
He kept his promises.
He kept his promises, and of course he had to thank very much his wife for that too, because he was the greatest woman, I think, that has ever existed. And she was behind him every second. And I think that America loved her as much as they loved him, Eleanor, you know. And I think he was a great president. That's the only two eyes I ever cried in my life for people that were not my family. Roosevelt and Kennedy. Oh, and the day Pasternak died. The day Pasternak died, I just felt like I have lost one of my family.
Because his work was important to you, his writing?
The one who wrote Dr. Zhivago.
Yes.
And his poetry. Oh my goodness, his poetry is the most beautiful thing you can read. And I lived with him for months, because I never went out too much, and I lived with Pasternak for so many years. Yeah. And the day he died, to me, is I lost something great in my life. Pasternak, Roosevelt, and Kennedy. That's the three lives outside of my family, you know, that really have felt in this world. Other people, I'm sorry, so, but those three, it has left a mark, you know. Even so, the other night they had Kennedy's funeral again, and I had to get out of here. I couldn't take it.
Too hard to watch.
Too hard to watch.
I felt that too.
Yeah, too hard to watch. And Roosevelt, the day Roosevelt died, I just cried like if I had lost my father. Maybe that's it, you know, every time those two died, they reminded me there was a parallel with my father. And my father's funeral was the saddest thing ever happened to me in my life. Oh, that was horrible. To know that he wasn't there anymore, you know. I grew up with a father complex, I think. I also adored him. There was nobody like him. And there wasn't. He was a great man. He was a great, great man, and so generous, so kind, so true. A person that you know that would never contradict his word, you know.
Now, how often did you see him once you were married?
Every 3 years. I went spend 6 months with him, or 3 months.
Did he come to America?
No.
Did he ever visit?
He never came. Well, he did in his days of politics, because he used to come to say to Washington.
Yes.
He had relationships, government stuff, you know. And he used to come. He used to get very excited when the first time he ever took a plane. He was like a child, you know. That was in 1916-20. He was just like a child. The first time he took a plane to come to the United States to see Corder Hall. He was very close to Corder Hall. And they had something going, I don't know what, the Cuban government and America. And I never see anybody running in the room, and because he was going in an airplane to America. You'd see such a serious man, such an intelligent man, that a thing like that would give him the joy of the world, to get in the plane for the first time, just like a kid. Yeah, just like a kid. But he was had very well relation in Washington. He had very good relationship there, but he didn't care to come. He came to Philadelphia to see us once. He came to New Orleans to see us once, but that's all.
Yes.
He never came to California. He thought that maybe Cuba couldn't do one day without him. He never came. But I used to go see him every 3 years. First with one child, then with 2, then with 3, then with 4, then with 5.
Now, when was your first child born?
Bob was born in Philadelphia.
What year?
1925.
25.
Yeah. And Helen, 28. Then Mary Jean, 31. Then 33, Dick. And then Paul, that was 1940. An old-age baby. Yeah.
They say that there are certain things one learns when one becomes a parent that one never has learned any other way.
Right.
What are some of those things?
One is responsibility.
So you're responsible for someone else for the first time.
Right. Another is love. Because I don't think you love anything in the world. You love your children when they're growing up. I don't know after they grow up and they go their way and all that, if it's that really that devotion. But when they're growing up, you can change them for nothing in the world. That's another thing. That's what I think the greatest thing about children, you know. After they grow up, you lose them, but still, the love is there. Always there. And mine have been good to me. I cannot complain. They all have been very good children. So.
And when did you leave Pennsylvania? What year again?
I left in 1926.
And went?
San Francisco.
Now, what was that trip like? That was a whole new part of the country.
Very interesting. We came by train. Then you came by train, Pullman train. I loved Colorado. When we went to the Grand Canyon, they stopped at the Grand Canyon. They stopped at Salt Lake City, and I thought it was very interesting. But otherwise, no, because since I was a small child, I was in trains all my life, going from home to the school, home. So trains had been part of my life always.
How did you choose to come to San Francisco?
Well, it was my husband's idea, business.
Business would be better here?
Better here than in Philadelphia, yeah. Than back east. He suffered from allergies and things, and he couldn't take the cold either.
Had he heard of, so how did he choose San Francisco rather than Los Angeles?
Because the first man he worked with when he came to San Francisco.
Oh.
And that's how he came here. So it was really, and then San Francisco, I lived very little in San Francisco. I moved to Marin County right away. And I was 25 years in Marin County.
What did you like about Marin County?
I love it.
What brought you out there? The mountain?
It's the greatest thing in the world. The mountain, the temperature, the people, better. And I just happened to fall with people that were very, very nice, very nice. And I just love it. I went to Mill Valley. My neighbor was Kathleen Norris, the writer, you know.
Oh, yes.
She was my neighbor down the street. Oh. And she was such a plain, lovely person. And I had met very nice people in Mill Valley. And it's created my basis in America, because that's the first time that really I had a home in America. Otherwise, I'd been just going to school and things like that. And met very nice people in Mill Valley. And then from Mill Valley, I went to Ross.
And which school did your children go to out in Marin County?
In Marin County, they went to the Dominican convent. And then the littlest one went to the regular public school that was way down my street in Ross, in Lagunitas Road.
Yes.
And then there was such wonderful people there that you didn't have to put them in private schools or anything like that. Wonderful people, yeah. So it was very nice. I love Marin County. I still do. And my children do too. They were brought up there. And they always have that really love in their heart for Marin County.
And where are your children now? Where do they live?
Well, Helen is here in Atherton. Mary is in very close to Alamitos, no? Los Alamos.
New Mexico?
No, right here.
Alamos,
yeah. And Paul is very close to Mary. And Dick is in Marin County. He's the only one to stay in Marin County.
Oh,
yeah. So they're really around. If I want to see them, all I have to do is not even 40 minutes from where I am, all of them. So it's nice. But of course, each one has their own life. It's pretty hard, you know, to get family together, especially the size of my family. And once your children get to be 50 and 60, they have their responsibilities. They're heads of family already. You know, it's pretty hard. And as I was telling you before, I'm a loner. I love to be alone. I love to read. I love to music, and I don't know. It's just to sit and think. I can spend a wonderful hour. I love gardening. I just adore gardening. Oh my goodness.
Now, what's the most important thing for keeping a marriage strong? So many marriages now end in divorce.
Understanding and respect for each other, and the first thing is to have patience, you know, and don't think that you are the only one. You have to be, it's a 50-50 proposition. Compromise and respect, especially respect. As soon as respect is lost, everything is lost, you know. Respect and compromise, you know, because you are yourself and a woman is herself. You cannot be the same. It's impossible. Impossible. Respect, and that brings love more than anything else, you know. Because that's the only secret of marriage, is respect. Respect and your ideas, because you are different, she's different. Respect each other, their ideas and their way, you know. If you're not the same, fine, you do your way, let them do their way. It comes to the point where you get together. Because that's what I remember of my father's marriage. The love they had was just respect. To him, she was a queen. And to her, he was the only person in the world.
Yes.
You know, it was just respect. Complete respect, you know.
And was that true with you and your husband?
Yes, we had a good life. We had a good marriage. My husband and myself, he was, his business was before anything in the world. So he never could get in my way anyway. He never was ever home.
Did you ever wish that he spend more time with the children?
No.
No.
Oh, no, I want to raise my kids myself.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, in that I'm not sorry.
Now, in areas of, sometimes when a couple is raising the children, one of them is easier on the children. And
he wasn't interested. He wasn't interested.
He wasn't interested.
He wasn't interested.
You had to do the disciplining?
Disciplining and everything. He wasn't interested. His business was everything that counted, and his way of life. And I respected it. Okay, fine. And I raised my kids.
So he'd come home at night and have dinner?
10, 11 o'clock. They didn't even have dinner at home. They were always so busy in San Francisco. He and his two brothers, they had dinner in San Francisco. They would work until 11 o'clock at night. It was completely a life alone, my life with my husband. Saturdays and Sundays. Then he took the kids here, took them to the movies, so they left them at the movies, but them candy. They think of him as the greatest thing in the world, because he took them to the movies on Saturday and Sunday and gave them candy. That's children for you, isn't it?
Yes.
All they remember, oh, Daddy was so good. He took us to the movies, and until they grew up, of course. But that's all that counts for children, attention, you know. And they realize, oh, Saturday and Sunday, yes, he would take them to the movies, and that. But otherwise, he never got home before 11 o'clock at night, before we had the ferries, before we had the bridge, I mean. They would lose the 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock ferry, and they had to stay in San Francisco.
Oh.
And there were 3 brothers.
And they were inseparable?
Inseparable. They went to dinner together, they did together, they worked up their hours of the morning together. For them, family was something that just is had and will carry your name, and very good provider. And that's very Spanish, and that's very European. Very European. It's the mother who raises the children. The mother. So I was glad, because I much rather not interfere in my way of raising the kids. But he never interfered. He was never interested.
How about Sundays? How did you go to church in the morning, or did you?
Yes, not in the morning, just Sundays.
Sundays, yes.
Well, they were in Catholic schools, so they had to do whatever the priests or nuns told them, because they all were brought up in Catholic schools. So it was very easy. My life was very easy. I had the whole day to do what I pleased. I had the most beautiful garden you ever want to see. And that was my life. I just loved gardening.
What did your husband like to do on his time off? With the be with the children?
No, in his time off, he would go. He had another office in the basement of the house, and he would be trying something else.
And making jewelry? Would he be?
Jewelry, or learning how to polish diamonds. Or
really?
That was his life completely.
He loved diamonds.
Oh, he loved his trade, his diamonds, his jewels, completely. It was a fascination completely.
I'll bet you have some beautiful pieces of jewelry.
I never wore them.
You never did? You didn't much care for them?
Yes, I had a lot of jewelry. Gave one to my children. I just never wore them. I don't know why. No, never.
Yeah.
Maybe it had something to do with the convent training.
Oh.
I thought it was ridiculous to be hanging with jewels. Yeah, I did. I felt like a gypsy. I did. And so, whatever he gave me, sure, my daughter's got it.
Yes.
But never. It's something that's been in me since I was a little girl. Maybe my father has something to do with it too, because I used to play and put collars and things on the necklaces, and says, don't ever put jewels on yourself, you look like a gypsy. Because I was very dark, very black hair. Don't wear jewels like that, you look like a gypsy. Maybe something had something to do with that. He would give me himself earrings when I grew up, and I would give them to my sisters. And I wasn't extremely religious or anything like that. It's just that no love for jewelry at all.
Were there times that you and your husband particularly had to pull together with some crisis with one of the kids?
No, never.
Really?
He never interfered. I don't think he even knew their names sometimes. completely in his world. Completely in his world. Yeah. He was very good to them. They gave him everything they asked for, but he was just in his world. Yes. And I was in mine, so we never had arguments. I never had an argument in my life with him, ever. Never had an argument in my life with my husband. And yet I walk out on him. When I wanted to work, and he said I wouldn't.
What?
When I went to go to work,
he said no.
I had studied pharmacy, I had taken the board in San Francisco and all that, and I was going to keep me behind bars, because actually I grew up with him behind bars, the bars of the house, fences. I never could leave the house. He would put somebody to see where I was going, and I didn't care. I'd stay home. That stupid Spanish jealousy, just streamed me. So I have been brought up common, so I didn't care.
So you were used to it?
Used to it. But the day that I took the board of pharmacy in 1943 or 40, I was already a woman. My kids were already grown. And I said, I am going to work. And he said, no. I said, yes. And that was it. And I just walked out with what I had on. I didn't even carry my clothes.
And so
that's how stubborn I am. Huh?
And so you took the test?
No, I had taken the test,
Oh,
which was against his will and against my father-in-law's, and I took the test. And I passed it. In fact, I passed it with the highest average we went 100 and something, only 15 of us came through. And I had the highest credits, 2 credits more than the one below me. So, well, I had to study in Cuba with French professors. I knew chemistry and physics and all that like they teach it in our countries, So to me it was nothing, examination. And I passed it. When I came with it, I think they were going to kill me the day I came home, that I had passed the board in San Francisco. And I walked out 3 weeks after. All my kids were in school. I put them all in boarding school. And I worked from then. This was 1950, 40 something, 48. And I worked until 1975.
How old was Paul when you left? The youngest?
Paul, well, I had a nurse for him. He was 2 years old. But I had a nurse for him always. And I always worked from 8 to 4, so I could be home at 5 o'clock. So I didn't interfere with my children, and all the kids being in school until 3:30. So it didn't interfere with the children at all. And then I worked until 1975. So that's a number of years.
Where did you work until 1975? What was the last place you worked?
The last place I worked was at right there in Menlo Park. What's the name of that pharmacy? Clifford's. That's when I gave up. You know, I was already 72 years old, and no, I was 75. It was 1978 when I stopped working. Well, too many boys without work, too many pharmacists without work at the time. You know, it wasn't fair. You know, to hold a job like that when I really should have stayed home. You know, I quit. I never was given a vacation or anything, ever, by any of the people I worked for, ever. I took care of pharmacists, I do everything. And then I had my own pharmacy for 12 years in Merced, which was really a fortune, you know. I bought the pharmacy. Nobody would help me to buy the pharmacy because they didn't want me to. So I made just luck, you know. I went to work for this fellow in Merced that had two pharmacies, one in Merced and one out of Merced. And he said, "So will you work for me?" And they go, "Yes." So I came. Your mother wanted me to stay in Marin County. Well, you were just a baby, you won't remember. And but I went to Merced and worked for Mr. Colburn. But 3 years after, something happened. They took the land away from him. He had his pharmacy in Shell Oil land, so he had to get rid of the pharmacy. And so this man was a Jew, had opened a center in Merced that had everything, and he opened a huge pharmacy in the corner. He wasn't a pharmacist, he didn't know anything about pharmacy, but he wanted a pharmacy there. So he took a young graduate, and bought the pharmacy and put it, him as responsible, and he was going to get the profits of the pharmacy. His market was next door, and the kid failed. So he knew that I was leaving Colburn, so he called me, and he says, "Will you come and work for me?" I said, "No, I'm not working for anybody anymore. Next time I work, it's going to be my own pharmacy." So being that I was a woman, you know, and a stranger, foreigner, because after all, no matter where I go, they know I wasn't born in the United States, so I'm going to take this one in. I said, "I'll tell you what you do. You work for me 6 months, and in 6 months, you raise $10,000. It's yours." And he signed it, you know, at the bank. "It's yours, and it will be the down payment for the pharmacy." And I said, "Okay." Of course, he thought that I was going to be able to make it. First, being a woman, men, that's how Jewish people are in a way, you know. They say, I'm going to use this because he knew what I had done with Colburn. I raised Colburn's pharmacy from nothing to a paying pharmacy. And it was a little pharmacy, it was the cutest thing in the world. And he said, "Okay, February, you give me $10,000 down payment, and then the pharmacy will be yours." And I signed the paper. Why not? For 6 months he would pay me a salary, but that's all. And the second day of February I gave him the $10,000. Made by the pharmacy. Made by the pharmacy. It was in such a bad shape. Such a bad shape that they were losing money. The kid was running it. So he insulted me. "You're trying to get advantage of me." You see these things that he didn't call me. They go, "No, miss, the contract was that if the 1st of February I could pay you the down payment, the pharmacy was mine." I brought a lawyer, of course. Sure, the pharmacy was mine. So I bought that pharmacy with $100 that I had put in the cash register for change, you know. And the day I left, I took the $100 out of the cash register. You know how much I made in that pharmacy? $40,000.
Oh, wow.
Clean. Because I sold it for $80,000, which I had bought it for $30,000. So $50,000 profit.
Yes.
That's what I made of that pharmacy. 50, plus making about at least $250,000. My salary was $2,000. That was $25,000 a year. So making the salary, my life, I don't know how many cars I bought for everybody. I know all the money I gave here and there and everywhere. So hundreds of thousands of dollars that pharmacy gave in 14 years. And I walked out with $50,000 claim because I had to give Uncle Sam $30,000. The tax was awful. The pharmacy was sold for $80,000, and I think Uncle Sam kept $30,000. But to me, it was all profit. I went with $100 from the day I started, and I walked away with my $100 from the cash register. It was the most fantastic tale of success that you ever heard in your life. But it had a lot to do with my temperament. See? There were Spaniards there, a lot of Spanish people, a lot of Mexicans in Merced now. Colored people, I treated them very well. I had been brought up among them.
Yes.
So to me, they were human beings, you know, in Cuba.
Can you tell us about the condoms on the counter?
Go.
The condoms on the counter?
Yeah, sure. And I had colored people from up the other side of the track that nobody had wanted to wait on them in Merced. I had Italian, Portuguese. You don't know the amount of Portuguese people in Merced. And they were my friends. They were my customers. There were 43 doctors in Merced then, and they all sent me prescriptions, every one of them. Not all the prescription, because I never gave them a box of cotton. The doctors and the pharmacists make business, you know, and the pharmacists supply this and this and that, and they send the patients. I never did. I never asked a single doctor for a patient, and I never gave them anything for their offices, ever.
Oh, so if the doctors
that's the game between pharmacists and doctors, you know.
So you send them supplies if they send you.
Well, they give them this doctor and this and sure, business.
Yes.
And they send the customers to the patients to the pharmacy. Not me. I never in my life supply. And at Christmas time, I would give them or a pen or something like that, something prettier. Never supply any doctor's office, never get them a thing for nothing, never. I didn't need them, I didn't want them. You don't work the doctors, you work the people. The ones you have to bring in, it's not the big shots, you know, the doctors, because they can change their mind. If the other one offers them a little bit more, they're going to send the prescriptions over there. And I had all that experience at the Owl, you know. I had good experience at the Owl. I worked 5-6 years for them. I got the experience of a lifetime. So I learned pharmacy real well at the Owl Drug Company, practical pharmacy. So that was the story of the pharmacy. And the rest, you can see it now. Here I am, encantada de la vida, like they say, happy with life. And see my children, my grandchildren, they come, I go, see if they have a party, I go to their party sometimes, not always. And I'm always busy. When it's not with the dog, it's with the garden, if not with the kitchen. I love to cook.
Well, Andy wanted to know, what about the condoms on the counter?
Oh yes, that's one thing that they don't know in California. I was the one who put the condoms outside of the prescription room.
Well, that was way ahead of...
Well, we couldn't sell it. We were all women in the pharmacy, all my...
Oh.
And the men would come and walk out. And the pharmacy, there was one pharmacy that came for an hour or two at the Owl. And instead, it was sort of they saw me, they used. And then the pharmacy would come and under the counter like this, you know. And I said, how ridiculous they are. They are the women contraceptives right there, in the middle of the store, with everything you can think of. Right there in the middle of the store. And just because they're men. So, the third week that I saw the men coming and looking, and they go, okay. I brought everything from the prescription room and put it right in the front of the counter. All the pharmacists in Merced called the board of pharmacy. They were jealous. Oh my God, they were jealous. They called there were only 5 private pharmacies in Merced, and 2 of them called the board of pharmacy right away that I had put. So the man from the board of pharmacy came, and I said, well, I just talked to him. I said, we're women, all women here. What's wrong with selling a contraceptive to a man? What about that? Look, there's the women's apartment. You go look over there, see if you don't see every kind of contraceptive right there. So he was very fond of me for some reason. He became very fond of me. He had come several times to the farm and said, okay, I'll fix it. I never heard another word. I never heard another word from the Board of Pharmacy, and I kept them right there, and then all the kids the girls start selling them, and then all they have to do is point, and it was a good profit for a store. Never, the Board of Pharmacy never set foot there again. Can you imagine me that nasty to call the Board of Pharmacy? Just because it was so angry because I drew a lot of people from Merced. I doubled the intake of the pharmacy in less than 2 months. And of course, what I took, they were losing. But I had nothing to do with them. They were way in the center of Merced. I was on 21st and G, quite far from the center. And that was the story of, you remember that? Well, you know, I saw them the other day at Payless. I went to Payless and they're right there at the cash register. I just felt so tempted to go and tell the pharmacist, do you know who put them there? I just felt like telling him I was the one who put them outside of the prescription room. And then everybody started doing it. Mm-hmm. Then they all started doing it, you know. But why not? What is? There was no law that forbade it. Why? Because the farmers have learned to say, I said, how ridiculous, I used to say, you know. They go to the pharmacy and the pharmacy would pull and give it to them under the counter. They go, my God, how ridiculous, you know. So that's true. You reminded me of that. Oh yeah. I had some experience when I first started practicing, you know, because my English, I didn't know the slang English of the country. And one day when a colored man came to the store and came to me and says, what do you do for crabs or something? I boil them. Yeah, I boil. Oh, he started to scream. Scandal in the pharmacy that day. I boil them, I said. I always boil them. And I never knew the expression, you know, something new to me, you know, just slang, American. I boil them. And another time that was just as good. One fellow came and he says, he asked me for a condom, and I said, what size? I didn't know anything about them. I didn't know they came in different sizes. And to me, natural wear, that would be different sizes.
That seemed a smart question, right?
And I said, what size? He says, what size? I go, yeah.
Large, he probably said.
My God, no. He started screaming. It was the richest day in the pharmacy. Well, you see, I was just new. I didn't know it. I didn't know their slang or anything like that, you know. Those two that happened to me bad were those two. Yeah. I boiled them on what size. Well, I never seen one in my life. Never had seen one in my life. I know they existed and all that, but never had bothered with them. And natural thing would be that would be different sizes, wouldn't it? Common sense. Well, no. What size? Some scandal in the pharmacy. It was really fun. And there was the one that used to try to get me was the manager. That's in the Eldro company, Post and Grant, with jokes like that, you know. But he never got me the manager. But it was really a hard experience. The first, I had been a pharmacist for 20 years or more, and I had never been behind a counter. Never. Because in Cuba now, my father, what he wanted to do is open a laboratory for me, because I love laboratory work very much. And that was his idea for me when I went back to Cuba when I got married. Mm-hmm. So I never really had been behind a counter, but just what I had learned at the PCP, Philadelphia College of Pharmacy. That's all the experience I had. It was a year experience, but even so, that's no experience for the public. So it was funny. Only 2 times they got me though. Just 2 times.
Mom, did you live alone after starting your pharmacy work?
Did I live alone? Yes, I live in Merced all by myself. All the kids were married, and I had Paul in Bellarmine. That's the only child I had. They were married. Yes, I live in Merced. Almost 9 years, all by myself. Yeah.
And then off to San Francisco.
And then from Merced I came to Atherton, to 7 Maywood Lane, after I sold the pharmacy. And then I worked for people around here. I work in South San Francisco, in Hayward, for here in Menlo Park, I worked that way for 10 years. Until 75 that I said, better Perlita, let the young people take on, because you'd be surprised how people get, you know, when they see you're older and you have white hair, and that is, all of a sudden they get, I wonder if she knows what she's doing, you know? They get that attitude. And those things don't hurt me, those things that only give me a message, get out.
Yeah.
Get out.
Mom, tell them what happened to you in the pharmacy in Hayward.
Where?
In Hayward.
In Hayward?
The man that came into the store.
Oh yeah, that was held up. That's the last day I work. That's when I stopped working too.
That was your last day, you say?
Well, I didn't work anymore. Oh yes, a fellow came and held me up and, oh please, I needed milk for my baby.
Yeah, with a gun.
And I opened the door wide open. I already had the store closed at 11 o'clock at night. And he just put a gun at my back. And you think I don't know what I'm made. But instead of getting frightened, I got angry. I said, what do you think you're doing? I said. And from that day on, everybody called me, what do you think you're doing?
But he told you to lie down on the ground?
Yes.
And she goes,
what do you think you're doing? So he said, get to the cash register, get to the cash register. He had to keep pushing me to the cash register with the gun in my back. So when we got to the cash register, take out everything that's paper money. So I did. Thank God we had just read the register at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and this was 11 o'clock at night. And I always used to take all the money and put it in the refrigerator. Every cent, $400 or $500, whatever we had taken during the day, in the refrigerator. I had done that for years. And right under the veil, I suppose, you know, so all that was in the cash register at that hour, 3 hours work or 4, because we read the cash register at 4, but 6 hours, but 9 hours and bring much money in the pharmacies anyway, you know, after 6. So I had $100 and some odd dollars in the cash register, so I got it out and gave it to him. They said, now, get on your floor. Face down. They go, I won't get down on that dirty floor face down. Just like that. And he didn't do anything to me. He just grabbed the keys. I had the Volkswagen keys in my hand. See, he was afraid I would follow him or something. He took the keys because we were ready to go. Took the keys and took off. But he never hurt me. I said, no, I'm not going to put my face on that dirty floor. But the girl that was with me was the sister of the owner of the place, was a Chinese girl. And she could never get over it. She told everybody, the store, the customers, what had happened. And from that day on, they called me, what do you think you're doing? Well, really, you know.
It's the right question.
What do you think you're doing? Put a gun in my back. If he wants money or that, okay, ask for it, but why a gun in my back? Well, you just came out, that's it. Just, what do you think you're doing? So from that day on, they called me, what do you think you're doing? And I wouldn't lie with my face to the dirt. I wouldn't. He left me alone. I have a way of scaring people, I guess. Stubborn, see? Stubborn people scare people. Yeah. No, that's the only time I had a pharmacy in Merced. It was all glass all around. Everybody was held up in that neighborhood. They never touched the pharmacy. They never went in. They never stole even a packet of cigarettes. And we were all women. Never anybody touched our pharmacy. And they held up the gas station, the bar, everybody in the neighborhood. But they never, and probably that's the confidence I had, you know. That's where the what do you think you are doing came in. Because I was a young boy, well-dressed, could have been my grandson. Beautiful car waiting outside for drugs. I did the thing for drugs. And what do you think you are doing? It was fun. I didn't even know that I had said it, you know. The girl that told her brother. And it became the joke of the store. So I stopped working about two months after that, because it was too dangerous, you know. A woman my age, I was already 72 years old. No, 75. I never looked it. I really looked very young. But 75, and having a gun at your back? No. No more. No more. But it was really, oh, I had several. But really for so many years that I work, I never had anybody steal or anybody bother me, or never, ever. And I was alone in the pharmacy from 8 o'clock in the morning until the girls start coming at 10, 11, you know, and I stay there until 10 o'clock at night. 11 o'clock in Hayward, I work until 11:30. Nobody ever bothered me, ever. Well, very lucky.
Mom, can you tell us more about Joe and the last years of his life that you know about?
Well, I don't know much of his last years of his life. He lived in San Francisco, I know. He had a nice apartment in San Francisco. And he went hunting a lot with a friend of his. And I really don't know much of it. I had dinner with him the day Paul graduated from grammar school. And that's about all I saw him in all those years.
What happened with the Ross house?
The Ross house, he sold it when I took off. If I had been American, I would have taken him to jail, but I wasn't American. Yeah, he sold it. He sold everything. That's very Spanish. They're very vengeful, you know, very vengeful. You know, that's against the law here to sell a woman's house, a woman's home. I could have taken him to court, but who cares? I had a good job, made a lot of money. I didn't care. Well, my upbringing too. My country, you don't sue a husband for nothing in the world, even if he tries to kill you.
Yeah.
And so nothing happened. He just sold it. Sold it. And you know how much they sold that house for 5 years ago? For just the back, for $2.5 million. That like 8 acres in Ross. You can imagine.
Oh.
Stupid. Eh? Just for space.
How much did he sell it for?
What we had paid for it, $33,000. Right now, that property, now it's 8 acres. Now it has 1, 2, 3, 4 houses on it. It's easily worth $10 million. With a new house they built a house almost $2 million on the top. And the big Ross house, the big house, they sold it for, that one they sold for $1 million, 2 acres, and that house. And then what was the barn? You remember the barn? What was the barn and the doll house? They separated, sold different as 2 other houses for $30,000 each. Things that were for the kids to play in, they sold for $30,000 each. So that property today, easily, would be worth $10 million, easy. They have built the most glorious house in the back. The back then had 5 beautiful acres just of redwoods. And they have built the most glorious colonial home up there that you want to see. So attorney in San Francisco. They have opened a road because they didn't permit us to do it. Because we wanted to build a house up there, but the town said no. He got the permission to make a road. Had to take the pool, the swimming pool, part of the swimming pool, but they made a road up there, and it's the most glorious house you want to see. But I just love that house. But not even that house made me stay.
Yeah.
Cabezona.
You were.
I was my father's daughter.
Yeah, yeah.
What's right's right. And I think I'm still his daughter, and I always will be until I die. Because he was the most honest person I ever known in my life. And so intelligent, and yet so plain, so innocent, you know. He was something. Just take a look at his face and see what a wonderful face he has. He was marvelous. And imagine at 32 being left with 7 kids. He had a life. Of course, no, he was put us in convents, but even so, you know, the responsibility of 7 children at 32 years of age. And he raised us with the best in the world. With the best always. He was a good man, a wonderful man. And it was not a father fixation or anything like that. I love him because he was worth loving. Everybody did. Not myself alone. Everybody who knew him loved that man. He helped everybody. Well, I never known anybody like him yet. Maybe you'll be like him. But I've never known anybody like him. So selfless, you know, because there's something bad of nowadays that when they get better condition or they get wealthy, all they want is more and more and more and more. You know? You never would have in Cuba, like I was brought up, a family where somebody needed something in the family. They are not going all to get together and help him or her, you know. It's a law. Over there it's law. If you need money, that your family is going to give it to you right away if they have it, you know. It's the law over there. This independence of people in this country, you know, once they get grown up, they grow up or they get married, or they don't even care about the family. Look what happened with that woman this week. She had buried 7 people, of all people that she had in her care. And nobody knows, nobody has cared.
Nobody even knows, that's right.
In 7 months,
they're missing.
those poor devils, what was happening to them. Imagine having me in a home, and in 7 months not knowing whether I'm there or not. It's incredible to think about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it's happened. Some of them been buried 7 months ago. And no family, nobody has come to even ask for them or how are they. So she must have something to do with the social worker, you know, because the social worker had to come every week or 2 from the government to see if they were well taken care of.
She always said they were out shopping.
And the social worker has no report either. She said they were all right, and some of them would disappear for 6 months. And I don't think she's killed anybody. Have you been following it?
Yes.
I don't think she's killed anybody.
You don't think what?
She has killed the people. I think she's greedy. They have died, and she has not come. They have buried them. Yes, that's very bad to bury them. And she's been cashing their Social Security.
Oh.
Sure. I don't think she's a murderer. But of course, people, nobody cares about them. Nobody even know whether they're dead or not alive. Start dying. It means $3,000 or $4,000 for her a month.
Yeah.
So she's been signing their Social Security checks like she did when they were alive, collecting them, and that's it. Nobody to care. Nobody is scared. So this has been very pleasant, very nice. I never thought I would be on TV.
I was just thinking, you've done a lot of things in your life that the feminist movement has been arguing for the same rights to do politically. I mean, you did it naturally.
I just did it. I didn't join any movement. I just did it.
Oh, you didn't have to join a movement. So what's your advice to women? Just do it.
Do it.
Do whatever you want.
Right. Do what you want, as long as it's within the law.
Yeah.
And as long as you don't, as long as you don't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
That's the question. Why not?
Why not? Because if the women did the right thing that they want to do, the men would follow suit. Because behind every man there's a woman. No matter how you want to look at it, one way or the other, it's always the woman who wins in the end. Always.
Not those that got buried.
Always the woman who wins in the end.
They were mostly men that got buried.
Because the men always come around. They are the stronger sex, it's true. But when it comes to thinking and planning, you cannot beat a woman. You can. Its quality, the feminine sex has been born with, to be able to get around the man. It's in everything, in the animals. Who gets around the dog? The female, the bird. Wherever you go, the female gets around the male. They find their guiles or whatever, but they get around the man. And in the long run, they're not happy without a woman. A man cannot be happy without a woman. It's not natural to be happy without a woman. Well, sometimes you can, but they handle them all right. Look, all that's happened in the world. There is a woman behind everything. There was Josephine behind Napoleon, and there's the poor Kaiser, his wife, that sent him to his death. Not the Kaiser, I mean the Tsar of Russia. She was the one who sent him to his death. He was away in the front. He had nothing to come to Moscow for. And she shamed him. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should face them and all that. And he faced them. And they shot him and her and everybody else. There was no reason why they should have come from the summer palace where they were and put themselves in the hands of the Bolshevik. And you watch, just go back in history. Catherine the Great, the one from Francis II in France. There's always a woman behind them, all the greats.
Yeah.
Because they know how, you know. They don't tell you and insult you or anything like that. They have their...
Look at Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan. She ran the White House.
Sure. And
someone had to.
Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Eleanor ran the White House. And the kings, the queens, the emperors. Look at who ran Victoria, ran the world, because he married all her granddaughters and daughters to all the heads of governments of Europe. Victoria married all her daughters and granddaughters to the Kaiser of Germany, to the King of Spain. She was Victoria's granddaughter too. They all, you start counting, Italy, in Russia, they were all Victoria's, either granddaughters or daughters. And she ruled the world. She ruled the world, and they almost got the world in the First World War too. Only, thank God, America went in. But they would have ruled the world completely if it hadn't been for the United States of America. They had Europe. They had Europe, they had Africa, they had India, they had everything. Victoria used to say that the sun never set in England. And it was true. They have possessions all over the world, the sun never set in England. So it's true that a woman is... Look at Elizabeth first, the first Elizabeth. She was the one who changed completely England. She educated England. She did the things that Elizabeth didn't do, and from her time on, England kept on being better and better and better until now that I think she's going back. But always a woman. They have very powerful minds.
Did you see that in the convent, in the sisters? Powerful women were the
exactly.
sisters.
Exactly. To me, they were the only things that existed in the world.
Yeah. So you saw how powerful women could be.
It was very hard for me after I left the convent to get used. Actually, I was even afraid to go any place alone.
Yeah.
They're very powerful influence. Yeah. Only those who were very great educators. You know, Mothers of the Sacred Heart. They were expelled from France and they came to America, and the Mother House became in New York, I think, was the Mother House. But every great Catholic in America came forth to help them. Look in California. The convents are the most glorious things you ever want to see in California. They all belong to Phelan or to the other millionaire or the other. All the rich people of America help them to set their convents in the best. Look, the Sacred Heart in Menlo Park, the one in San Francisco. Phelan gave them to the nuns. And in Cuba, the same. In Cuba was a palace we lived in, given by a Spanish nobleman to the nuns when they expelled them from France. But they were great educators, so very highly educated women. That was very strange in those days. A woman that's really educated, almost like a man. Women knew how to read, write, and knit, and cook. That's what they taught them in the schools. And the 4 rules, that's all. Read, write, and then mathematics up to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. That's all. I know about my eldest sister. That's all they taught her. And then she was ready to get married, and this was in 1911 still. So women had no rights, whatever. No higher America, yes, there was a woman already that was going to medical school. But there was 1 or 2 or 3 at the beginning of the century, that's all. To the thousands that go today, women had no right, whatever. But that's how it goes. Let's see now what happens from now on. The world right now is really in in a crazy mood, isn't it? Yeah. So, now what else can I tell you?
Well, is there any other questions from the outside here, the outer perimeter?
I can tell you that you are very, very nice and very patient, and I have enjoyed it very, very much.
Well, I've enjoyed it too. There you are.
Oh, look at me. Mira. Hey. Why, hello, ni Garbo.
New Garbo. The new Garbo?
Yeah. No, the new Garbo. No, I'd rather be Katharine Hepburn.
Oh, Katharine. Well, you're a lot like Katharine Hepburn, aren't you? You're independent and strong.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Now that you said that, I'm glad you did.
Strong opinion.
I thought so, and then I thought maybe I was too presumptuous.
Oh.
But it's true. I am very much like her.
Do your own thing.
And if you read her life, the parallel with her life and mine is so. That's incredible.
I've noticed it too.
That is incredible, yeah.
Did you ever have a secret Spencer Tracy in your life?
No. I'm sorry I didn't. I think that part of my life lost. I'm sorry. I was too much in love with pharmacy.
Well, that was your Spencer Tracy.
Yeah, that was my Spencer Tracy. Too loving with medicines, with drugs, with too much in love with it. And too tired, you know, 14 hours a day of work doesn't give you time for Spencer Tracy's. Yeah. Yeah. But really, right, as long as they are Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, because they are two indescribable people, you know, just the two of them. But you don't find them too much. As a rule, the second wife, or the second woman, or the second, or the second man in the life, are just for fun.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work. That doesn't work. No, men are too voluble, and so are women. They're the same. They shouldn't fight, really. That's very much this. Why shouldn't they be? They are created by God, one from the rib of the other, as far as the religion goes. Eva was created from a rib of Adam, so they should be the same. Yeah. And I think there's a lot, very, very similarity. Man much stronger naturally. But that of before, that the man was parangon, and the woman was nothing without him, and without him she'd die and couldn't raise her children, that's all finished.
Yeah.
It's a complete equality. If you get along, fine. If not, you shouldn't live together. There's too many nice people in the world. Too many to take go from anybody. You know. At least that's my philosophy at 85. I've learned a lot.
You've done pretty well by it, by that philosophy.
I learned a lot, yeah. I learned a lot.
Well, I've enjoyed talking with you too.
I have enjoyed very much your company.
You've had a fascinating and good life.
Yeah, I've been happy.
Yeah.
I've been happy. I've been happy because, as a rule, without hurting anybody, I've done what I wanted to do. Yeah. I don't think I ever hurt anybody much.
I mean, there's nobody buried in your backyard?
No. Nobody buried in my backyard. You can be sure of that. I couldn't even kill an ant. You know that I go around trying to kill flies, and I can't? I can't let them go. I can't even squash a fly. Of course, I don't think I do it so much because I love flies, but for the mess.
If the truth be told.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I have one more question.
Yeah.
You have lots of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Now, they will at some time see this videotape. Now, is there anything you would want to say, based on your life, as you've lived your life, that you would tell them at their young age, either to do or not to do, or what to pay attention to in life to make a good life?
Well, I would tell them in the first place to always dedicate themselves to studies, and what they learn to learn it thoroughly, and what they like to dedicate themselves to that one thing, and not let no one oppose them. And I think that if children were not given so much freedom and so much liberty, And what a little more this discipline, not discipline with the stick, discipline, moral discipline, you know, and a counsel from the parents that they would be much better kids than they are today because they have too much liberty. Not my own, thank God. My own are pretty good, all the kids. But on average, the children, for the things they know at 9 and 8 and 7 years of age, I don't think it should be permitted. I don't think it should be permitted because what do they have left by the time they're 15 and 16? It's not only for morality, no, it's just what have they got left by the time they're 18 or 20. They're already tired of living at the rate they're going.
They're already expected to be adults by then,
exactly.
by 9 or 10.
Completely adult. Look at this little girl the other day having a baby in a classroom at 11.
Really?
And yes, in some town here near San Francisco, and who went to help her for 2 other kids 10 years of age until help came. Not the teacher, but 2 other kids, 10 and 11 years old. Come on, that's just going too far. Going too far. They're saying sex games. They bring it to the house and the kids play them. Come on, that's too much, you know. That's too much because they're losing a lot in life. They're losing their years of innocence and of really, kids like to figure things out, you know, and do them their own way, and they're killing all that in children because they have nothing to create.
So your advice is to live the age you are and be patient, and you'll learn what you learn when you learn it.
Right. Right. And it's really a sin what happened with children nowadays. Children at 10, girls are almost grown-ups. See, when I was 10, I was an infant. I didn't know anything about life or care less. Now at 10, they want high heels and cruise and this and that and have a date with the boys. Come on, that's too much. That, I think they should curtail on that, you know, on that sex education and all those things, because that's not right. That's not right. And this about boys and girls thrown together all the time, I don't think that's right. Because no matter how innocent they are, they're curious. Children, you know, the other day we rented a tape, thinking that was something from out of space. What was the name of the tape, Phil?
I don't even remember.
Huh? Something from out of space. That's the name of it. Yeah. And the tape starts. And it started with a bunch of little children, 8 and 9 years of age. And one of them teaching them the sexual act with a bottle and a banana. Oh no, with himself. They take a little boy, 7 or 8, and a bottle. And one of the boys was teaching the whole group of little boys the sexual act. And the little kid gets stuck. And the mother comes, sees what's happening, and takes the kid and hits him against the wall to break the bottle. Well, at that point, we closed it out, and Phil was furious, went to the woman and said, "What do you, give me a tape like this?" They said, "Yeah, I don't know, it was something about space." Can you imagine? In the meantime, 2 little children, a boy and a girl, had gotten away from them and were hiding under the bush doing their business. Come on, showing that to kids. Phil went and insulted the woman practically. "Why do you give me a thing like that?" And that's just the first reel, only the first part of maybe 10 or 14 seconds, even less than that. And I says, "My God, Phil, what is that?" But of course, then they make it funny too. The mother comes and grabs the kid and throws him against the wall to break the bottle. But imagine, kids 7 and 8 years old teaching each other. Can you put that in a bottle of that? It's funny. It's funny for a man to see that, or a woman midnight, but to think that kids are watching those things, because the name is something out of space. But I said, my God, that's the last I had to see. Oh, it's funny. It's real. I told your mother, I said, "Do you know what we got in the tape?" And she laughed, and she laughed. They said, "Mary, don't you laugh." I said, Mom, it's so funny. Digo, can you imagine? She could have cut the little kid to pieces, throwing him against the wall, and the bottle broke, you know? I think it's horrible. I think they're going too far. They're going too far with all this education for kids. That's not right. I don't think it's right. But I think that children, if they obey their parents, and if they obey their parents and try to do what their parents tell them, because the parents will always guide them right, and then just adapting themselves to the things they like to do. Mm-hmm. We'll be a happier world. You know, you cannot have all the kids doing the same thing, or impossible. I think the system of education is not so good. That's the first thing that Mr. Bush would have to do, improve the system of education of this country. Children that graduate from high school and they have their diplomas and don't even know how to spell or know how to read.
Or write.
Mm-hmm. And yet they know everything about dogs and cats and puppies. Mm-hmm. No, that's not right. But you know what's going to happen? I think we're going to turn back to the Victorian era.
There'll be a reaction and go back to the
Something is going to happen, and boys and girls are going to return to the Victorian era. Not as strict as the Victorian era, but I think so. They're going to get sick and tired of all this.
But you know, maybe nature will enforce that through things like AIDS.
Yes.
AIDS is maybe a reaction to a lot of things.
Right, and it's you see, something has to happen, you know, and will be a new group now. Maybe these girls and boys that are growing up now, realizing what's going on, the divorces of the parents, this and that. Maybe there'll be. It's the universities who create everything, really, you know. So maybe the young people of 18, 20 will take a turn for a different kind of life, because now it doesn't make any difference. There's no weddings, nothing, open marriage to this and that. That's not okay. Let a man 50, 60, 70 years old do it, but a boy 18, 20, 25, you know, that doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem right. No. They're teaching the children too much too soon, and there's so much intelligence among children. Oh my God. I watch my little great-grandchildren, I can't believe it, how smart they are. I was teaching one of them chess yesterday. He's 5 years old, and took me less than 10 minutes, and he had learned all the names of the pieces and had learned how they move. The ones that moved straight, the ones that made this way, the one that could jump, in less than 10 minutes. Now, you can imagine the little minds, how prepared they are today to learn. They get on that computer. You wouldn't believe it, some of them, what they do. How old is Shelley's little girl?
5.
5.
She's 8.
You should see how she handles that computer. It's incredible how they're prepared, because how the word is said, their brains are alert, you know, they're prepared to learn. This little kid yesterday, I couldn't believe it. Every name. Now, I told him that the name of the rook was tower in Spanish, torre. Oh, I like it better. It wouldn't be a rook for me, he says. I like the word tower. But he had learned it already in less than 10 minutes. You know what it is for a little mind to keep, and the ones that are the bishops and the details of the queen and the details of the king, in 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes at most. I know it was a short time because the uncle Nando's brother rushed in and spoiled the situation, and he took off. He didn't want to be bothered, little boy. But I don't think it had been 15 minutes. And I don't think he'll ever forget them. Just for fun, I'm going to call him tonight and ask him the names of the pieces of the chess. And I'm sure he'll tell me. Mm-hmm. Alert. What else was he said, Phil? Oh, he didn't want to get in the car because Phil was teaching Helen's girl to drive. And am I going to go with her? He was scared. But, oh yes, you have to get in the car. So he got in the car. So Phil took him and the Helen's house is very close to here. And when he got off the car, and it says, Gloria, what's her name, Gloria?
Rose.
No, Rose, you are a very good driver. Like saying, that's okay, next time I'll drive with you. But 5 years old, you know, how quickly they think. Another kid probably would have got a fit. No, I won't go with her. No, he still Phil tell him go in and says, well, if she does tell me to go in, it must be safe. But not only that, when he got there, he says, Rose, you are a very good driver. Kids, 5 years old. So their minds are so alert, you know, so alert that, well, in China they teach them to read at 3 years of age with their religious books. Why cannot we do it?
Violins too.
Violin at 3 and 4 years of age in China. I saw an orchestra of Chinese children that were below 5 years of age. So the brains they are so alert, and they learn things too quickly and too fast. See? So give them nice things to think about instead of the stupid television there. I would forbid it for children. I would. I know they would never let us even read the newspapers when we were growing up. So we would know what was going on and the things that come in the newspaper. I never was, that's why I have no love for newspapers. Because I think I was 14 years old before my father let me touch a newspaper.
And he owned 3 of them, right?
Yeah, he owned 3 of them. He would let us touch a newspaper, always for the dirt a newspaper brought. But the other things that were worthwhile, he always would explain it to us, tell us, you know. But he never let us touch a newspaper. So I have no, newspapers don't exist for me. I don't like the Wall Street Journal. Teaches you how to make money.
We're just about at the end of the tape. Is there anything you want to say?
Well, what I said
Anything
before.
else? You've said it all.
What I said before, I have said it all. You're very, very nice and got to all this trouble.
It's my pleasure. It really is. And you made a wonderful lunch.
To hear an old lady mom blah, blah, blah.
We'll do it in another 10 years from now.
I hope so. Listen, if my aunt is in Cuba with all the trouble they have is living to 100, I should live in California to 110. She's 100 years old. That's great. That's living. But my grandmother died at 96 anyway. So you are long living, kid. You better use your years. You're going to be an archimillionaire by the time you're through. Or don't put too much
Emphasis.
Too much faith and love on money. That's not everything. That's not everything. Yeah. Well, all I can say is that I'm very glad that I could break out and talk about my father for such a long time. I don't think I've mentioned him for years. Yes, I always talk to Phil all the time about him. But very nice.